Hey guys, Bass Addict and Opticast Pro staff, Matt Kaliszewski. So the last video we uploaded, we were focusing on the color of our presentation, and primarily the contrast of the color of our presentation, and not only our bait, but our bait relative to the background, whether it be the vegetation or the color and clarity of the water we're fishing. If you guys didn't get a chance to check it out, you can click back. I think it's Bass Addict, presentation color, contrast, and I'll add the link in the details section below this video. Anyways, what I wanted to do was segue from the things that we learned in that last video and tie it in with some tips and tricks that I learned from the tactical bassing guy on how to target the biggest bass in a school of bass. We've all been in those scenarios where we've got on a school of actively feeding bass and we're catching one after another. My tournament partner and I, we call that Miranda because it's automatic. But anyways, we've all been there, and it's very hard to stop doing what we're doing because we're putting one after another on the deck. However, we know that 100 small bites doesn't cash a check. 5 big ones do. So how do we target those big fish and those big bites? Well, the tactical bassing guy, one of the things that he had brought up was that typically the bigger fish in a school, well, we know that similar sized fish, bass, tend to hang out together, but there's always a couple fish that are a little bit bigger than the rest of them. And where they like to hang out is actually below the actively feeding smaller fish in that school. The bigger fish are, well, they're bigger, they're wiser, they're lazier, and they're not going to want to spend all their energy chasing around forage and shad. They're smart. They're going to sit and wait for all the smaller fish in that school to do all the work for them. And as those fish are either injuring, discombobulating, or isolating shad or forage, and they segregate themselves and they fall into that sight picture of that larger bass, it becomes a much easier meal for them. So that's the type of presentation you're going to want to throw into an actively feeding school of fish to try to entice those bigger lethargic ones underneath the smaller active feeding ones to bite. And one little added bullet in the gun that can help entice that larger fish is to add some life to what would otherwise be a lifeless, dead mimicking shad or whatever type presentation. And you can do that by grabbing some of Smartbaits plastics. They have plastics that actually change color as they pass through different temperatures of water. And we know that, of course, as you go deeper into the water column, the temperature gets colder and colder. And just like our last Bass Addict video, not only does the temperature cool, but the different colors in the white light spectrum also get absorbed at different rates too as you go deeper into the water column. So more colors are going to be, or some colors are going to be more prevalent than others as you go deeper and deeper. So again, our buddies at Smartbaits, they have color changing plastics that add life to what would otherwise be a lifeless bait. Just for example, I've got a few of their colors. I grabbed their red black fleck. This is a Smartbaits minnow 5-inch fluke style bait. Red black fleck, and I have this primarily for fishing green stained waters. Actually, as you can see, as I've just been handling this bait, it's been starting to change color. But in colder water, this color reflects red light. It appears red. In warmer water, this one I've just been handling for the last couple minutes is chartreuse. And you can see the remnants of red and chartreuse and how it's been changing color as it's been exposed to different temperatures. So you throw this in and you're above that thermocline in those warmer water temperatures, and as you start to pass down deeper to where those bigger fish are kind of hanging out and lurking waiting for an easy meal, all of a sudden that red's going to start to become more invisible on this chartreuse body. It's going to be high contrast to that green background. It's going to stand out, and it's going to add that bleeding look or appeal to what otherwise would be a dead stick kind of presentation. And that little extra added thing might trigger that big bass and the biting and helping you guys add some weight to that live well. Now, in addition to having kind of color changing attributes and physical properties to your presentation, you can add something to your plastics, like any kind of attractant. I know a lot of guys they kind of frown upon that stuff and don't think it makes a big deal. Well, predatory fish feed on three things: sight, scent, sound. If you're going to throw a dead sticking, kind of lifeless, mimicking type presentation in that whole school, strategy that we just talked about, adding a little something like a liquid baits or liquid mayhems rather, bait attractant scent. They have shad, craw, garlic craw, a whole bunch of different flavors. I'm pretty partial to their shad one, but you can grab some on Liquid Mayhem's website. Add that to your plastics, and again, to a normal, what would otherwise be a lifeless presentation targeting a larger bass underneath the school of actively feeding bass, you now have a color changing or bleeding and a pretty enticing smelling bait as well. So give that stuff a shot. Grab you some plastics at Smartbaits website. You can also grab some attractant from Liquid Mayhem. I'll try to post as much pictures and little tips and tricks as I kind of tweak my strategies and what baits work and what scenarios best. But hopefully those little tips and tricks help you guys optimize every cast and put more meat on the deck.